Hey crafters, it's Artsy Craftsy Phoebe, and I know it's been a long time. So today I'm going to show you two cards, and I'll be using these two stamp sets, the Snowflake Sentiments and the Good Tidings stamp set. These cards are quick and easy to make, and they'll be good for mass producing. So for my card base, I'm using Cherry Cobbler cardstock in standard A2 size. Two layering pieces of Whisper White cardstock, that's 5 1/4 by 4 inches. Two pieces of Cherry Cobbler, that's 3 by 4 1/4. Two more pieces of Whisper White cardstock, that's 2 3/4 by 4. And a scrap piece of Whisper White cardstock. And for inks, I'm using my Old Olive, Pear Pizzazz, Cherry Cobbler, and Rose Red ink pads. Okay, so let's get started. So for my first card, I'm going to be doing the spotlight technique. So I'm just putting a little bit of adhesive at the back of my small piece of Whisper White cardstock. And I'm just putting it right at the center of my bigger piece of Whisper White cardstock. And now I'm going to start stamping using this solid piece of leaf stamp and my Pear Pizzazz ink pad. And when I stamp, I make sure that it's overlapping on both pieces of cardstock, and I apply a decent amount of pressure on the stamp to make sure that it stamps on both cardstocks. And then I'll just repeat the process on the other side. Now I'll be cutting up the same stamped image for my next card, so I'll go ahead and stamp the same images on my scrap piece of Whisper White cardstock. And now moving on to the next step, I'm going to be using my Old Olive ink pad and this stamp, and I'll just line it up on my already stamped images. And next, I'll stamp this solid berry stamp using my Rose Red ink pad. And then I'll stamp this image using my Cherry Cobbler ink pad. And then finally I'll just stamp this stem with my Old Olive ink pad. And then for my sentiment, I'll just stamp this using the Cherry Cobbler ink pad again. Alright, almost done. So for this piece, you can fussy cut the image or use the Brothers Cannon cut if you have one, and we'll use it for the second card. Alright, to start putting my card together, I'll carefully detach my cardstock and I'll start layering my pieces together. And just make sure your images line up. And then to finish off my card, I just added a piece of gold bow at the bottom of my card, a few pieces of gold sequins, and a touch of wink of Stella on my leaves and berries. And my first card is done. And now moving on to my second card, I'm going to be using this cable knit embossing folder, and I'll emboss my bigger piece of Whisper White cardstock. And then I'll adhere this piece onto my card base. Next, I'll stamp my sentiment from the Snowflake Sentiment stamp set using my Cherry Cobbler ink pad. And I'm stamping this off to the right. And then I'll just layer this on top of my Cherry Cobbler piece. And then I'll stick this whole piece on my card base. Now those two pieces of holly that I've stamped and cut earlier will go right at the top left corner of my card. And then I'll just add this little bow that I made using the stitched satin ribbon in Real Red. And I'm all done. So here are the two cards that I've finished. And that's all for today, crafters. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial, and I hope you all have a lovely day. See you next time. Bye!